Hey, it's Jordan with TYT and TYT Network. We're here in scenic, cloudy Charleston, South Carolina. Still nicer than 3 degrees in Iowa. Last night's Republican debate. My impression was the GOP race has really come down to Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, or Donald Trump, of all people. In terms of Cruz and Trump, they went at it on whether Cruz is eligible to run for the presidency, being that he was born in Canada, his mom was born in America. You might not know this, but since the debate, the first actual birther lawsuit has been filed against Ted Cruz. From the New York Times, an 85-year-old trial lawyer, Newton Schwartz, filed the complaint in federal court in the Southern District of Texas in Houston. He said the entire nation cannot afford such constitutional confusion and uncertainties overhanging the electoral process. So he's filed a lawsuit against Cruz. A little background on Mr. Schwartz. He's a Democrat who voted for President Obama and plans on voting for Bernie Sanders. So this might be kind of the opening of the floodgates. You might start seeing some lawsuits against Ted Cruz. Not so much because they think they could win, but to damage his credibility, his reputation. Donald Trump is in Iowa today. You should know, if you're interested in going to see the movie, Donald Trump has rented out and paid for a local theater in Iowa for people to go and watch the Benghazi movie for free. So if you're really itching to see that Benghazi movie, head over to Iowa. He might even pay for your flight. Ted Cruz is still here in South Carolina. He's about 3 hours north of us tonight at a rally. And Marco Rubio is headed up to New Hampshire, where a lot of the other candidates like John Kasich, Jeb Bush are. The poll that Donald Trump opened the debate praising was NBC and Wall Street Journal's poll that has him 13 points ahead of Ted Cruz. It was a national poll. Trump's at 33%, Cruz at 20%, Marco Rubio at 13%, Ben Carson at 12%, who, by the way, many pundits joked, is he still in the campaign after another sloppy debate performance. Governor Christie and Governor Bush rounded it out at 5%. Trump's 13-point lead over Cruz is an increase from last month when he held just a 5-point advantage over Cruz. In a hypothetical one-on-one, just Trump versus Cruz, Cruz actually topped Trump 51% to 43%. The Real Clear Politics average, which kind of boils down a whole bunch of national polls into one average, Trump is actually at 34.5%, Cruz is at 19.5%, Rubio 11.8%. I'm going to skip the lower tier candidates. Iowa, where things are really getting interesting on both sides. Cruz 25%, Trump 22% in a Des Moines Register Iowa poll. In a Quinnipiac Iowa poll, Trump's at 31% and Cruz is at 29%. Margin of error is significant. So honestly, the media has been saying Cruz is going to win Iowa, but Trump seems to be gaining traction back. After Ted Cruz insulted all of New York, including me, born and bred, by decrying our New York values, which I got to hand it to Donald Trump. He really kicked his ass, basically invoking 9/11 to say, I'll tell you what New York values are. Then mention the firefighters and brave people who, helped out with that tragedy. After Ted Cruz insulted New York, he then wrote a fundraising email. His campaign wrote a fundraising email specifically to New Yorkers. Quote, "So I'm counting on you, New York," he wrote. "Can I ask you to make an urgent gift of at least $25? The New York Daily News won't be donating. Their front cover is Drop Dead Ted. Hey, Cruz, you don't like New York values? Go back to Canada. I want to tell you some stories from the campaign trail, specifically in Charleston here. When I got down here yesterday, I went around town and spoke to some local citizens. My impression of South Carolina, coming up and learning about politics, was this is, wherever you go, true blue conservative state. Not so in Charleston. A lot of liberals down here. First, being that I like to talk to everybody, I went up to a nice African-American man who is currently homeless, named Anthony. I asked him what he thinks the conservatives can do. He actually brought up Donald Trump. Anthony told me, Donald Trump doesn't care about me. He's running for, quote, publicity and attention. He was kind of mixed all over the place. He said, I could go for Cruz, I can go for Hillary. So, he's obviously not that in tune to politics. He's currently not living in a home. But he did say he doesn't think Donald Trump cares about him and called Donald Trump a reality star. I went into a fedora store to go shopping for myself, actually, and I ran into one of the store workers named Taylor, We got to talking. He knows the Young Turks, and he actually told me that he's pretty liberal, and he's for Bernie because Bernie, quote, cares and has a passion for the human experience. He kind of bashed Hillary a little bit for being a stooge for corporate donations, which we've heard from a lot of our supporters and a lot of Bernie people. Bernie's authentic. Hillary's just a shill for the, Wall Street and corporate donors. I also, when I was eating a nice fried chicken sandwich from a delicious barbecue place, coincidentally I ran into a couple that's Rubio supporters. I kind of could tell one of the female end of the couple was wearing a Rubio pin strapped over there, and I got to talking with them. They didn't want to give me their names. They're not working with the campaign, but they're fundraising for Marco. They've had dinners with Marco. They know Marco, and they told me something very interesting, that Marco would be doing a lot better fundraising-wise if Jeb Bush traditional Republican donors would give to him, but they're not right now giving to them because they don't want to get blackballed by the Bush dynasty and the Bush clan. So you have a lot of people who have donated to the Bush over the years. They pretty much know Jeb's candidacy is dead in the water, but they don't want to sever their ties with the Bush clan, so out of loyalty, they can't give to Marco yet, which is not that Marco's, in the street begging for pennies, but he hasn't really been able to really get his fundraising into gear until Bush drops out. When that is, we don't know. Bush had another kind of milquetoast debate performance, didn't do great, didn't do awful, just kind of was there, which obviously he needs to make a big dent right now if he wants to move up. Nationally, he's about 3-4%. So this couple also told me that they had dinner with Marco about 2-3 years ago, as all the candidates were beginning to angle whether they would run, whether they wouldn't run, and Marco wasn't so gung-ho about running right away. A lot of people think Marco, from the minute he got into the Senate, wanted to run. He basically told this couple that everybody's telling him it's not your time, it's not your time. Couples like this basically told Marco, look at Obama. Everybody told him it's not your time, he's president. Not that they agree with Obama, but they pointed to him kind of as a example of, screw being your time and the pecking order. You're what we need to save the country from this tyranny known as Barack Obama. I was friendly with them. I don't try to get into altercations in barbecue places. So that was an interesting story about Marco. Post-debate, you'll see some of the interviews we shot. Kind of the same story you saw on the Donald Trump side without the birtherism and racism. Just a lot of people who are supporting Republican candidates when you press them on the facts, whether it's Marco Rubio is another candidate with a huge tax cut for the rich.
I do think so, because if you look at several economic theories, there's the big theory, really popular, Reaganomics, trickle-down economic theory, in that when you have a lot of money, you will spend more money than those who don't. And so with the rich, if you taxed the rich more instead of taxing them less, taxing them more, they'll just take their money and put it in another country and we'll get no taxes.
Well, pushing back a little bit, over the last few years, when you've given huge tax breaks to wealthy people, the numbers show they give money back to their shareholders, they buy another yacht. When corporations were allowed to repatriate money back to America a few years ago, there wasn't an explosion of jobs. A repatriation meaning at a very low tax. So history doesn't really prove that out, that if you give more money to wealthy people, they're reinvesting it.
Well, if you're able to get a bigger tax out of them by taxing them less, encourage them to keep their money in America, then we are getting a bigger tax out of them. Then rather than you say, okay, let's tax the wealthy at 90%, well, the wealthy are going to be investing in Cayman Island banks, they're going to be putting their assets, or they're going to be buying assets overseas where you cannot track them. They'll be buying islands, they'll be buying, in South American countries particularly. They could even invest in the Swiss banks and whatnot.
We got into a very tense discussion with a family, father-son duo, about Islamic terrorism and the wisdom of President Obama labeling it that, which Republicans are gung-ho about.
Does that not make common sense?
No, I'm not against border security. I think what a lot
common sense.
Right. I think
it's common sense that you wouldn't let Syrian refugees come in the country.
Why would you not let Syrian refugees in?
A lot of the people that are coming in there are Muslim people that have ties with terrorism. I'm not saying all of them are, but a lot of them do. So
Where are you getting that from? I mean, has there been the?
that's where all the people are coming from. That's where all the terrorists are coming from, is over in that region of the world.
I believe the Confederate flag stands for our men and women who died. I don't believe it has anything to do with race.
You don't think it has anything to do with race?
I don't. No, I don't.
Cruz versus Trump. What do you guys like about Senator Cruz more than Donald Trump?
I'll tell you, my biggest difference is Cruz stands for, he has an ethic. He has a moral guide that guides him. Cruz doesn't have that. Trump does not have that.
That's why we are for Ted Cruz, because he is a man of integrity. He's not someone like Trump, who is like a ship in the ocean that's tossed back and forth by the wind.
He is willing to do things that may be legal, but may not be ethically right.
Exactly.
You know, because he has no moral compass, I guess.
I wrote a column today just on my personal website, jordanchariton.com, basically hitting the media and debate moderators for essentially letting candidates lie on stage and not pushing back. I'll give you an example. Neil Cavuto asked Donald Trump about his opposition to letting in Syrian refugees. Donald Trump basically spoke like he's been against it the whole time. In September, he said, I hate it, but we need to let them in on a humanitarian basis. This was September 2015, 4 months ago. So essentially, Donald Trump just reversed his position, was not pushed back. Chris Christie said, I've never donated to Planned Parenthood, and I never supported Sonia Sotomayor when she was being nominated for the Supreme Court. In 1994, he's quoted in the New York Star Ledger that he gave personal contributions to Planned Parenthood. In 2009, he's quoted as saying Sonia Sotomayor is a qualified choice for the Supreme Court. So these candidates are literally just moonwalking and lying on stage, but not being pushed back. It's not a shocker that you're not going to get pushback at a Fox debate, but if you really look back, CNN's other debates, there's been more of a push to kind of create a wrestling fight rather than actually fact check candidates live on stage. And these are professional journalists. They're getting paid millions, most of them. They need to know, going in when you're asking a question, what the positions of these candidates were 4 months ago. In a lot of cases. Donald Trump, another example, continued his biblical adoration for the Second Amendment. Maria Bartiromo, when she asked Donald Trump about it, didn't really reference the fact that in 2000 he was for an assault weapons ban. He was for an extending background checks. Now he's against all those things. I know they like to do their, we evolve as humans. Most of these people have evolved way more than the normal human. So my column, check it out, jordanchariton.com, is essentially talking about how the moderators and CNN and Fox are essentially accomplices to political hackery.